When you build your own boat, you get to do things your own way. One of Steve's priorities during the building process was to make general boat work and engine maintenance as easy as possible while living aboard. And 3 of those choices that Steve made years ago perform as intended this week.
All right, what do we got? 3 miles? 4 miles?
I think 2.
2? All right.
Yeah, it's not too bad. What is he doing?
He's looking out the porthole. You can't see from down here.
He really is.
He's looking up the 2 portholes.
So it turns out one of the biggest uses for the vise has been rigging projects. We are post haul out, and one of the things I did when we hauled out is I took our anchor pennant off, which connects to a hard point on the stem, and it's so that when we are anchored or moored, the line's not fouling the bobstay. And when we launched the boat, I took a dock line and lashed it in there, but I've wanted to replace it with something with splices and something a little bit beefier. And right now, I am working on the eye that is going to connect it to the stem of the boat. And that sees a lot of wear. It's below the water, just below the water, so it's not something that we're putting hands and eyes on regularly. So I essentially am making an armored loop. I've wrapped it really tightly in friction tape. And now we are gonna seize it in seine twine. This is essentially what we did to the standing rigging. And that way, this eye has to wear through the seizing, and this nylon on the sheath and the core, they should work less on each other, which will lead to it lasting longer. It's one of the things that eventually kills and wears out nylon lines, or lines in general, is you have all these fibers and they just move against each other. And just as things are pulled tight and let loose, and what happens over time is just that friction wears it out. And then tree work, they'll call it glazing. The rope starts to get crusty. Sometimes if you let it run out too fast and you kind of melt it, it'll glaze it as well. So by wrapping this so tightly, part of the hope is that it slows down how much those fibers can really rub against each other and buys us a little more time and how long that line's gonna last. I am sure there is a more efficient, professional way to do this. You can let us know in the comments.
Just be nice about it, please. Is that what you wanted?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, that's what we want.
Great.
Just crush all those fibers in there, make them so they can't move.
So do we have to sew?
Here, about this far.
Oh, the whole, oh,
So line to the line to the line, and then we'll wrap it,
okay.
and then that'll create this eye in the end.
All right.
Sewing with a double up thread and some wax nylon line. So I am positive that there is some sort of formula for this, and there is some sort of true stitching pattern for this, but I am just gonna put so many stitches through this thing that it just doesn't matter. And then afterwards, we're gonna wrap it as well. So this is,
With the seam like serving.
yeah, over all of the stitching.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then you have to break the serving, you have to break the stitching
yeah.
for the line to go anywhere. And then we have 2 attachment points because it's a doubled up line. So in theory, if we leave the other end on deck and attached to something, you could have this whole eye rip out and still be attached to the mooring or the anchor.
Seems like a good system.
Yeah, it's like a belt and suspenders and another belt with another pair of suspenders while you're wearing overalls. It's about as far as we need to go. Boom. Here we go. So that'll go through like that. That gets hooked up to the big bronze plate that the bobstay attaches to. Now on the other end of this are 2 big ol' eye splices, and these will get shackle put in. And one of our hooks.
That seems pretty beefy.
Yeah. And normally if we're anchoring or tying up to a mooring, we would just use one of them. If we thought all hell was gonna break loose, we can use both of them. It allows us to tie up on port or starboard, or tie up on the anchor on port or starboard, and not have to flip the lines around the bow to either side. So I think I'm really happy with this. I got to get wet out of the tender to reach down in the water a little bit to install this.
I'm really glad it's not worse out. I just hit my head on the boat like 8 times. Every little wave is just like dong, dong, dong. What's happening now is we're sitting on the anchor pennant. That's what's holding us to the mooring ball. And then that backup line is just slack. Just in case. Cool.
While the conditions were not good for making it further down the intracoastal waterway, it was a perfect day to take care of some engine maintenance, utilizing 2 more things that Steve still doesn't regret doing.
Before we make any way south, I got to do a little engine maintenance. So this is a Keenan filter system. We put this in at launch. It's dual filter, so we got filter 1 and filter 2. And on our way down here, filter 1 was getting kind of crummy in the bottom, so turned the handle, switched over to filter 2 right on the fly. And this thing has some pretty cool features, and we're going to put a couple of them to use right now. while we do this filter swap. It uses twin Raycor filters, so no proprietary filters, which is really nice. Out comes the filter. Take the plug out the bottom, and we use this old peanut butter container here. And we can drain all the gunk out of the bottom of it. So you'll open the valve and a little bit of diesel will come out and a little bit of junk will come out, and you think you've gotten it all, but you haven't. And a little piece of seizing wire poked up through with the valve open, and you'll see it come up inside the bowl, and you just swirl it around a little bit and you'll get that gunk broken up, and all of a sudden a whole big bunch of diesel will come through, shut the valve off, and you got all the junk. The filter doesn't look bad at all, though. The filters look pretty clean. I have seen far worse. Probably put gloves on for this next time.
Goodness. Wow, there it goes.
Now comes, I think, one of the coolest tricks of this rig. There is diesel in here, but there's also a ton of air. And then this one basically has no diesel in it. We turn the fuel filter on, and we turn the lever for the fuel polish return. We're running filter 2 here. Filter 1. So what this, there you go, what this pump was doing is pulling fuel from our aft port tank, running it through the fuel filter, and returning it to the aft port tank. And it sounded really unhappy because it was pumping air and it was getting all the air out of the system. And now it sounds much happier because it's just pumping fuel around. So we'll let that run for another second and make sure that we get all of the air bubbles cleared out of the system. And then we'll switch it over to filter 2. And you can see the fuel level drop, the fuel sight. And now it's filling up. It does not clear any airlocks between this filter system, our secondary system, and the engine. So if we had an airlock there, we would need to go down to the engine and deal with it. But anything between the fuel filters and the tanks, the fuel filters can clear. Next one. Turn that off. I'll switch back to running on filter 1. Turn off our fuel polish, and then we can turn off our fuel filter. Filter swap is done. I have more secondary fuel filters, but these primary fuel filters look pretty clean. The separator and the bowl did a really good job of collecting everything. So with how clean these look, I don't think we really need to fret about changing that secondary at this exact moment. But we should do it in the not too distant future.
Great.
Next up, oil change.
Next up, oil change.
This is something I am so happy with. And when I got the Indani engine, and this is with a lot of engines, the oil filter was mounted down at the bottom of the engine. And one, getting to it would be incredibly difficult. And two, with the engine sitting on the engine beds down in the bilge, there's just like no possible way to take a horizontal oil filter off and have something underneath it to catch the oil. Like, you're gonna spill oil, period. There's no way around it. And then there's a little pump that you could use that seemed like quite the knuckle knocker. This is slick. I'm gonna turn on the oil change pump. And I'm gonna reach back here. And I'm gonna take the cap off for the oil so that the air can come and go. And then I'm gonna take this here hose, put it in the jug. And then this is the best part, right here. Behind this panel is a reversible pump, and this is a 3-way switch. So right now it is off, and if we pump out, there's our old engine oil. We've been doing a lot of motoring. I probably should have changed it a little while ago. Yeah, I think pretty much all this is going to go back in, because this is 2.5 gallons. That was 1 gallon. That's probably close to 1 gallon, and this thing is not full.
Nice.
Okay. Make sure you pop that old gasket off. Yeah, if you stack one gasket on top of the other gasket, 2 gaskets is not twice as good. Just a little bit of oil. That way when the gasket goes on, it wants to slide on and not catch and bunch up. There we go, snug on the oil filter. All right, so pump the oil in. We're close to having all the oil back in, so I'm gonna carefully tuck this switch back. And then I'm gonna slide on in here. I can do this from the lazarette as well. And I can reach the switch, and I can reach the dipstick. So I kind of doubt we're registering on here yet, but we'll take a look. Yeah, I think we are starting to register. Put a little more in. Okay, she's full of oil. So we'll fire up the diesel for a second, check the oil, see how it looks. Fire it up for a few more minutes, check the oil, see how it looks. And then I'll swap between the 2 filters and just make sure that all seems good and the engine doesn't stall out on us. And all that checks out, then systems are good and we can clean up and pack away. And if that doesn't work out, we can clear the airlock, we can add the extra oil and do that now while we're all set for it. All right, oil pressure came up. 3.5, 4. All right, I'm gonna check the oil. Oil level dropped a tiny little bit, but still looks good. So I'm gonna start the engine, let it run for a couple more minutes on filter 1, and I'll swap back to filter 2, let it run for a couple minutes on that, and then we'll shut down and clean up. Now that this first oil jug is empty, we'll take it out of this water bottle, which isn't an appropriate storage facility. And the marina up by the trash cans said that they have a spot to accept used motor oil and old oil filters and fuel filters, so we'll check with them tomorrow and hand this stuff over. Cool. Oil change is made easy.
Akiva's like, I'll like brisket.
Courtney used to hang them on her earlobes.
Oh yeah?
And she's a little, if you hold them up there, they'll bite your earlobes, but they're hard to get off.